Great. Welcome to the Williston Board of Health meeting for Wednesday, September 23rd, the virtual Zoom meeting. Just have some instructions about the Zoom calls. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns related to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by Town Council. One concern is that the chat function allows for parallel text conversation to the board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring but is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room, which are not incorporated into public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibits any member of the town from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join Zoom meeting that are set so their microphones are muted. If you call in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone so that the meeting may occur in an orderly fashion. We ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you've called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute and state their name and address, and after speaking, we request that the participant return their microphone back to mute. So according to our posted agenda tonight, we don't have any public hearings or discussions this evening, but we do have some items to address as a board. So we ask that everyone keep their hands lowered until public comments are asked for after the member comments. So under administrative matters, our first item is a COVID update. So Jim or Scott, do you guys want to start?
Sure, I'll start with some of the updates we received starting Monday. The workplace sector-specific workplace safety standards for restaurants and retail spaces will change a little bit. I guess maybe the best way to describe it is maybe loosening up a little bit. Some of the changes that you'll see to the restaurants, we're going to allow larger party sizes. So instead of 6 per party, they'll allow up to 10 per party. They're going to allow the bar space in restaurants to be used for food service. Bars can't open until phase 4, but they'll allow the bar area to be configured so it can be used for the service of food. And there's a list of requirements in there that allow the use of laminated menus instead of throwaway menus too. Retail space, 10 people per 1,000 square feet in the retail space. And one of the things that I guess some of the convenience stores are looking for, they're going to allow the self-service beverage stations again. And there's a list of conditions that the stores that need to follow to do that. As far as case counts, I think in the past 2 weeks, there's been about 5 new cases in Littleton. Unfortunately, the numbers aren't up yet for today as the start of this meeting. Usually on Wednesdays, they're up by 6, but I've checked a number of times and I don't see that they're up there yet. We're monitoring the cases as always, and though that seems like a lot of cases recently, that doesn't do anything that connects them together to indicate that there's anything happening in town other than people catching COVID.
So like you said, no connection to the schools being reopened.
Not that I can see.
Great, that's awesome. Does anybody have any questions for Jim?
Jim, do you have any connection, or all these, shall we say, internal family, or is there evidence as a result of movement? Any clues for the slight uptick other than a random walk?
I do not. I guess I went through to look to see if they were school related, like if we could kind of figure out if they're school related. I don't know who's related to who, so I can't really tell you. I mean, I wouldn't know that beyond that, but there was nothing obvious from the case tracing notes that would indicate that they're connected in any way.
And when you say, I'm sorry to belabor the point, it's just
No.
it's more of an exercise just in case.
Yep.
For example, I'll just call gasoline stations, Dunkin' Donuts. I'm not picking on them, by the way. It's just that, fast food store. Basically places that have become very active. I mean, you can see the traffic and the frequency of visits and all the rest going in. I just want to see whether or not the tracing and the accounting, is it revealing enough to tell you, even though it's small numbers of people, who's going where and what they're doing. And you don't have to disclose the details. It's more generalities. I'm looking for, like, it's a retail thing or it's a family thing. I mean, it's just trying to get some idea of where this is popping.
So we're starting, and this isn't specific to Littleton, so just because other people have asked similar questions, that we're seeing connections. We're seeing college students. We saw during the summer some vacations where families went on vacations. Those, and we're still seeing a smattering of a workplace related, if people are traveling to work together. Not, if there's a company van, if you will. So again, when I say I look at the case the case tracing notes, the nurses enter in information as they're doing their contact tracing. And so because I'm a Maven user, I can go in and take a look at those. And I'm not seeing anything that kind of jumps out.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for Jim? Kevin?
Not just really a comment. I've been tracking sort of which communities have been going from sort of, non-colored to green to yellow to red. And I just noticed a friend of mine pointed out that Tingsboro had been flagged red. And it's like, why out of this middle of all these green communities is this one red? And so I had actually made a call up to the health agent up in Tingsboro, Carrie. And she was awesome. She got right back to me, called and said, we're not really sure, but it's basically one family, like a multi-generational family that just doesn't really understand the difference between isolation and quarantine. And therefore their case count went from like 8 to 15, like overnight, and turned them to red. So I think it's more of just an educational thing, like within these like multi-generational families that get together on Sunday nights and have dinner. Just trying to educate them and make sure they know that it's a real thing and separate. And we know families want to get together, but it might not be the smartest thing.
Okay. Anybody else? Gino, Louise? Any comments or questions for Jim?
Well, not for Jim, but in answer to Kevin's comment, Janet just put up on the Board of Health website pictures of masks and explaining, that if you don't wear a mask, it's a high risk, and if one wears a mask, you're not as high, but you're still high. It was a good explanation of all the different scenarios. People can check that out as a reminder.
And
like
it's all over our TV too, with social distancing and hand washing. There's lots of education on the LCTV stations too. Gino, did you have a comment?
Well, I was on TV the other day. I have a Gino show, and I just specify the people that can get out as long as they have a mask, they keep a distance, they wash their hands. I mean, people should not be scared to go out. I mean, if they stay home too long, they get depressed. I have called from a lot of people, said, Gino, I don't know, I don't have a mask. I said, don't worry, I'll get you one. But go out, put a mask on and go out, go shopping. I mean, the people need to go out. They need to buy stuff. They're so afraid of everything. I mean, it's just like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
Well,
You go everywhere, Gene. You go everywhere. Of course, I put a mask on. I wash my hands. I mean, I don't have no fingerprints, but nevertheless, nobody can claim me for something because I don't have no prints in my hands. I wash my hands so much. I mean, you gotta have a little sense of human. You know what I mean?
Away with anything.
People need to go out, go shopping,
They need to be careful when they go out.
But that's right, distance 6 feet, even 10 feet if you don't like the person. Like I know somebody that I don't like, I like to be 20 feet away from them because they might bring me bad luck. But they can't isolate it, and Jim is right. I can understand. That's why I don't make any comment, because Jim explained to you everything you guys like to know. The question is, like the chief, I gave masks to 335 so far, and 200 more I allocate for a group, without mentioning any name. The question is, as long as they put a mask and they go out and they are careful, they will not catch anything. And they should have a flu shot. I got a flu shot. One on one side, one on the other, in case something happens really bad. You know what I mean? But
All right.
you
All
got
right.
it.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks, Gino. All right. Scott, do you have anything to add to the COVID discussion?
So, we continue on, with public safety as our challenge, getting our PPE. It's still very, very limited. It's pretty much, limited across the country. But it's coming in slowly. A couple things that we're working on right now, and Alex can talk a little bit more about. One of them that's coming up is going to be a drive-through flu clinic at the fire station on October 13th from 2 to 6 p.m. We're in the process. I would say, Jim, probably in the next day or two, we'll have a flyer out with all of the information, how everybody can pull the forms offline, fill them out, come to the drive-through with them pre-filled out. Nobody will be getting out of their car, and we'll have staff on site to administer the flu vaccines, and that'll be for all age ranges. On that note, we'll also have assistance from the Volunteer Corps. Between the Volunteer Corps and the Neshoba Board of Health and some of the paramedics from the fire station. This is where part of the EDS discussion comes in play, where Alex brought that up to you guys several weeks ago. The plan on the EDS for the potential of between flu vaccines and potentially COVID vaccines. So that we are at a place right now where we're ready to move forward with a drill, but we need to actually just get that okay from you guys and just officially have that buy-in. Alex, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that a little more.
Well, yeah, we have a good plan. It's good enough that the state is now using our plan for the training. I just got slides tonight from training they're holding, and it looks an awful lot like our plan.
Alex, I'm sorry, your voice is basically underneath the submarine. So if you could.
All right, it happens whenever you switch me on. It does something to my audio.
There you go.
So I'm not quite sure why it is. But anyways, there is training material out there now. It's based off our plan. We will train on that a little bit. But as the chief said, we do need to go ahead and have an official endorsement of this plan so that we can start the wheels rolling.
I have a question for you folks. Are you aiming, sorry the pun, are you equipped and ready to administer flu vaccine to children?
Yes, we are. We can administer vaccine from age 6 months and up.
Okay. And since I view the flu vaccine situation as sort of a small scale practice, as it were, for the COVIDs, are you aware of the fact that none of the vaccines coming through the pipeline have been tested or will be tested for children?
Are you talking about COVID?
That's
COVID
right,
or-
for COVID.
Okay.
COVID, that's correct.
So I think we're still a ways away from being able to administer a COVID vaccine. So
Well, I'm just looking at the protocols, and
Yeah.
since you're supposed to be getting ready for that, right, Scott?
This is just a dry run, using the flu clinic as that dry run. This has nothing to do with any vaccines for COVID whatsoever.
No, you're missing my drift entirely. Okay. Both the town and you are used to seeing people of all ages lining up for flu vaccine.
Yep.
So all I'm asking Alex and you is to think about if and when you get an approved COVID vaccine or whatever they're going to tell you is a COVID vaccine, that at least according to the 4 of them that are in the pipeline, none of them are suitable for children or pregnant women. So if any of them are in line, just think about what do you do innocently when a family brings someone along who shouldn't be getting the shot and they want the kid. You got it? That's all it's an alert button.
I can guarantee you we will not be the first ones to be giving this out.
Right.
No, and if I may, Mike, we had a little bit of experience with that with the H1N1.
Yep.
Because it was just the opposite. It was kind of set up for children first, and so we posted signs at the beginning of the clinic line that people could read to kind of go through and see if they were eligible, and then they could self-select. People weren't happy about it, but that's we addressed that. Obviously, not the scale that we may have to in this case here, but we have that in the back of our mind of how we're going to administer this vaccine.
That's all I was driving at.
So I've heard from somebody that the Park and Rec flu clinic was not, the vaccines were not approved for kids 8 and under. Your flu vaccine is going to be approved for everyone, 6 months and up.
So I think there was a recent change in, I don't know if it was an emergency change, at some point pharmacists weren't allowed to administer vaccine to children under 9, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding that has changed, so now they can administer down to 3 years. So I'm not sure if it wasn't that they had the vaccine for it, which they may not have because they couldn't administer it down that young. But we do have vaccine that allows us to administer 6 months and above.
Okay. And what about the mist? Is that something that's going to be available too, or is it just a vaccine, just a
We
inoculation?
just have injections, no mist.
Injection. Okay. All right. I guess we kind of interrupted. Did we? Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
Just really quick, I just actually emailed everybody the CDC's guidance on the vaccination, COVID vaccination interim playbook for local jurisdictional operations. I'm sure you guys have seen it, but take a look. It's 54 pages when we get there.
That's pretty much going to be a moving target for quite a while.
Oh, yeah. Just based on the storage requirements for those, I think 2 or 3 of the vaccines, I don't think any local clinic will happen.
Are they huge freezers? What are?
It's just, I think they have to be like 20 or 70 below 0.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is there a shortage on those yet?
We don't have those at our office. So that's what I'm saying. I would imagine locations that have that kind of capability would be the first to probably be able to administer that.
This is probably something that's going to partnership out at least at the state level and maybe the federal level when it happens. Although tonight they did announce that Johnson & Johnson was working on one that did not need that. So.
And only needed 1 dose, which was
Yeah.
hard to compare.
The Johnson & Johnson, they all need refrigeration. It's just a question of the ones that need the freezing are all based on the new technology of the RNA. The other one, Johnson & Johnson, is not. So it's strictly the platform that they're using that's temperature sensitive. So, and for all I know, they're going to release all of them, and depends on where you are in the country and what the need is.
Yeah, and who your insurance provider is and all that good stuff.
Now, this better be for free after the botched job. This better be for free.
So one thing that I believe we need tonight, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, is just at least buy-in from the Board of Health supporting, the volunteer corps in conjunction with Neshoba Nursing or Neshoba Board of Health and the fire department just to actually run this as between a tabletop and a semi practical session as a drill.
So you're looking for our buy-in for the drill part, not for the administration. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
You need
All
a
right, so
vote.
we're basically okay. With the understanding, what you're drilling is that only authorized and skilled personnel who have, shall we say, the ability to administer the inoculation is a separate operation from what Mr. McCurdy's operation will be. Correct?
That's correct. But what we want to work on is the ability to manage a crowd of people coming in to be treated by the clinicians, which in the flu clinic case is the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health.
Okay.
That's what we need practice in. That is a big stepping stone to the EDS, which we also need your buy-in on so that we know that we're going to be headed down that road and start preparing ourselves.
Okay. No problem with crowd control. I just want to make sure that our approval actually has some functional meaning and doesn't spill over into other kinds of operations which need separate approval by the Board of Health.
It's in short, it's about the entire process. Whether it's a flu vaccine, a COVID vaccine, whatever it may be, it's basically the approval for us to go ahead, count this flu clinic as a drill process. And it's just ensuring that we actually are getting the entire process down pat with all the volunteer corps, Neshoba Boards of Health, and Neshoba Nursing, everybody, so that we're using this clinic as that dry run to make sure everything is set up. We can work out the bugs and everything like that, just to be prepared.
Yeah, the flu clinic itself is nothing new. I mean, we've been doing this for many years.
Yep.
And that's their gym. So.
Yeah, I think it's great to have practice and to actually classify this as a dry run for something that can be used down the road. I have no problem with getting behind that. I don't know if you need a vote or a straw poll or what you're looking for, but I'll move to give you guys the go ahead to go ahead and do the dry run and get the.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be. I thought you guys would have some very specific definitions or at least some clear picture of what you're asking, what you're trying to do, for which I have no difficulty, approving. It's just I want to be clear what we're approving of.
So
Okay.
I can sort of frame the motion language if you'd like. Something like to endorse Neshoba Associated Boards of Health, the fire department, and a volunteer corps to exercise and incorporate an exercise in EDS within the flu clinic framework.
Yeah, I got some problems. Sorry, I'm really. You're actually going to be administering flu vaccine, okay? And you're doing on the other hand, you're also doing a dry run, and you're trying to use this as a dry run for making sure that your organizational plan is working. I got that. So if this is a dry run and you're trying to see the kinks, instead of just throwing everything up on the wall and saying, okay, we're going to put them all together, my question is, what are the I'll put it this way, what are the biggest possible bugs based on your past experience, that you're going to be particularly aware of? Because having read your plan, okay, I have a pretty idea of what you're going to say. So I'm just curious, what is it that you're going to be particularly looking at and for to give you some encouragement that you've got the right idea, even though I know you've done this before?
All in all, it's going to be us figuring out how we're going to operate that plan and getting the personnel trained to be able to put the plan in front of them and say, okay, now we have to do this, and not when we're actually doing it in the COVID environment, not be doing it for the first time?
So the flu clinics are done every year. The only change is that we're going to do a drive-through this year so that people don't actually have to get out of their car.
Got it. Okay.
This isn't something new. We're not recreating the wheel. We're just changing the administration of it. And we have officially put a document together that outlines the entire process. So by doing that, we now have this process. We have the entities involved in the process. We brought it forward to the Board of Selectmen as well as you folks. And we're just looking for the endorsement to go ahead and run that process. So yes, it's a flu vaccine. It doesn't matter if it's a flu vaccine, a COVID vaccine, whatever it is, the administration of it is all going to be relatively similar. It's just that process of which we do it. So we have put together this plan through the fire station with all of these organizations. And now by doing it in these COVID times, this gives us that opportunity for everyone to remain in their vehicle, approach to the station, have the different greeters make sure that paperwork is in proper order. Then they can enter through the building. They will make sure that the proper documentation is taken or copied, and then the vaccine administered, and they will proceed out the back end of the building. So it hopefully will be a nice fluid, situation. Vaccines will be administered, and then if there are some kinks or we address the need for additional personnel, we'll meet that at that time. Constantly taking notes as we go through this whole thing, and figuring out what we need to do and what we can do better next time.
So the only change is really they're just driving through.
Exactly.
And if there is a need identified for additional personnel, do you have sort of folks on standby for that, or like what's?
We have staff there. We have between Neshoba Nursing, the volunteer corps, as well as staff at the station. Our intent is to put on additional staffing. Right now, we are putting in our application with the state so that the paramedics can assist the nursing staff with the administration of the vaccines.
And I think Dan and Jennifer Kane are in the audience tonight, so maybe you can.
So basically, the new thing here from your past, from what I understand, is this is a drive-through.
Yes,
That's new.
that's correct.
Okay. So really, when this is the impression I got when you cleared it. Okay. So the basic thing that you're testing here, or really keeping an eye on, is the operation and logistics and management in a with respect to drive-through.
Yes.
So
That's correct.
Yes.
okay, so it's in-car operation, in-car administration, collection of data. Prior to that whole process is what you're really doing a drive run on, frankly. Okay, it's the drive-through aspect of it. Okay.
It's the entire process.
Yeah, but I know that it's the drive-through that is different for the group.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's what you're really testing for, that's what you're really trying to learn from, is what the bugs might be. There may be other bugs, but this is new. Okay.
And the whole plan is an updated plan of which
Yep.
you folks have received and have all reviewed. So it's just basically the basic buy-in of that plan and us going forward and running it.
Drive-throughs weren't allowed in Littleton.
It's a bylaw.
One last question. Have you guys taken a look at any of the videos or any of the existing stuff that's out there in addition to what you refer to in your plan about administering via drive-through?
That is the information that I got tonight, is the training that the state is giving in general to everybody. It's based off our plan, because we happened to be at the front of the boat when it came time for a plan. But they're providing the training We will provide that training to the volunteer corps members and anybody else that wants it once I have it to be able to post it. So yeah, I mean, I think everybody's going to be pretty much headed down the same path. If it's just we have a date that we're going to be doing it.
A date with destiny. Okay.
Yeah.
We're ahead of the game.
Date with destiny. I don't know if I'd put it quite that way. But
Have fun with the drive-through.
Yeah.
So do we need to make a motion on this and just approve that it's going to be, the flu clinic will be a drive-through?
That it will actually be a dry run of the EDS.
yeah, essentially what we need to know is the Board of Health is on board with the components of the EDS. And then we will begin to put the rest of the pieces together. And part of that is this flu clinic as the first stage ramp up.
Well, I'd like to make sure in the language of the motion that we specify that the plan includes drive-through administration of the flu vaccine.
I second.
No, I'm not making whatever
okay.
motion we have, it includes it.
Okay.
Mike, do you want to make a motion though? Or,
I think Kevin's there just very anxious to make a motion.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin.
No,
or Louise, did you have something that you wanted to say? You stood up. You sat up.
I know we looked at this a long time ago, and I'm sure Jim has been over to the fire station and talked with Alex and Scott. So were there updates or a lot of changes made, or I don't know.
You mean in the plan?
Yeah.
No, it just, we actually brought the official plan to you folks. The plan in general was pared down and simplified. We're just taking an opportunity and kind of running with it with the drive-through at the fire station instead of setting up tents in a parking lot, trying to keep it away from schools, practice the COVID distancing and allowing people to stay in their cars, similar to the COVID testing. And see how this works with the flu clinic.
I really like the plan, and I'll be happy to make a motion that we approve the EDS plan, including the evaluation of the processes used for delivery of vaccine via drive-through.
I'll second that.
Perfect.
Okay, so Louise or Gino, who seconded it?
We both did at the same time, but I'll leave the young
That's okay.
lady.
So
She's a
it's been seconded, so I'll do a roll call. So Kevin Baker,
yes.
Gino,
Yes.
Louise,
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Selden, yes.
Lisa Flanagan, yes.
Thanks a
Okay.
lot, guys. Thanks a lot. It's really,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually,
Scott, I sent you that flyer earlier this evening, so if you want to take a look at that, you could just, any comments you have, that'd be good.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. Jim, will you stay on because we have a couple of correspondents that I think.
Absolutely.
Okay. So next on all the COVID questions done, everybody? Any more comments or questions about COVID? All right.
I'm sorry, just one question for Jim. Just want to get it out there. Has there been any change in the Commonwealth's position on making testing capability available beyond what is currently available?
Now, it's all kind of nibbling around the edges. I know with the opening of school, they do have a rapid response team in case a school experiences, there's a certain criteria, you could pull the rapid response team out, but there's been nothing beyond what's currently out there for testing.
And the best of your knowledge, have the various choke points in the state's ability to carry out testing with more individuals and use testing to advantage, has that been at all, to your knowledge, the choke points removed, including time and ability to get time on the machines for analyses?
I certainly don't know it down to that specificity. I know the general rule was that if the tests were being sent, were being handled in-house, so in the hospital or at the Broad Institute or in-state, they seem to be being processed faster than if the tests were done by a commercial corporation that had to send it out of state for processing. But beyond that, I couldn't really give you any additional detail. Like,
And more fundamentally, keep beating this point, but more fundamentally, the testing is done after the fact of infection or suspected infection. All right. There is no surveillance, no sampling done as in other communities around the country and around the world, as far as we know. Correct?
except to the extent that colleges seem to be doing that preemptive and regular testing. So that's the only testing I know of that would be just kind of a regular testing process, regardless of status.
So with the exception of a few universities, the National Football League and the National Basketball Association, I'm not sure soccer gets it, but okay, I got the picture.
Okay.
There's a take-home message. Okay.
But Northeastern, when they opened up the school, had a news story that they actually set up a COVID lab so they could do all their testing in house. And to give you an idea of staffing, I think they were very quickly going to about 40 people in their lab staff to be able to do the testing for the university. So it's a big undertaking.
Talking about the NFL, I saw a stat that 64,000 tests were done and only 5 new cases were found. Now, I know that you can interpret that any way you want, but I just thought that was an amazing number both ways. So, all right. So next we're going to go on to the minutes for the September 9th.
Kevin has a question, Lisa.
Oh, sorry.
We've been talking a little bit about the COVID task force, and I was just speaking with a couple of folks that have some information on testing. There's someone that's working with the Harvard Public Schools right now with a company called Miramis, who does a saliva test, and they do it in pools of 24 or 25, and they're currently working out the pricing to get that accomplished in the Harvard Public Schools, and depending on how our conversation goes tonight about the task force, whether or not we want to sort of move forward with something like that. Regardless, this company, I'll email you the perspective I've seen. The pricing seems pretty reasonable, and it might be something that if we were able to request CARES Act money for 2021, maybe try and even get that in place sooner than later, and maybe talk to the selectmen about fronting the money to maybe get something like that in place. But I'll email you the document. It's a good read. Really cool stuff.
Right now, I will say that the CARES funding is tentatively expires in December
For 2021.
for this year.
For this year too.
Yeah.
Well, the request for this year were already have to be put in months ago.
So all of our requesting and stuff like that townwide, we are able to still apply for items up to 21. They have not extended it yet.
Oh, okay. So we need to get something in.
21.
If we're going to get it in, we need to get it in, is what you're saying.
We'd have to request additional funding. We already have our allotted amount for the town.
Okay.
But, they'd have to request more or something like that.
Okay.
Jim, have you heard anything of that, like what Kevin was talking about?
I haven't heard of it. I can certainly talk to the Harvard Board of Health members and
Yeah, I'll send you the PDF right now.
Yep.
Kevin, to your knowledge, has this test been approved by the FDA?
It's being run by, is it Thermo Fisher? And honestly, there's a lot of smart folks in the waiting room here that are interested in talking about the task force.
Thermo Fisher's equipment. I'm talking about the test itself.
You'll have to ask the folks in the room. I haven't.
Okay.
Any other comments about testing or COVID before we move on? All set. So just gonna, Scott, Alex, do you guys want to stay on or? Okay.
Have a good night.
Thanks very much.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Jim.
Hey, Scott.
Thanks, Alex.
All right, so next we have to approve some minutes for September 9th, 2020. Did everybody get a chance to read those?
I did, but
Okay, so can I, sorry, Gino?
I make a motion to accept it September 9.
And do I get a second from anybody?
Second.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call. Kevin Baker?
And Baker abstain.
Okay, we need to talk about that too, Kevin. Gino?
Yes.
Louise?
Louise Nichols, yes.
And Mike Zeldin?
Mike Selden, yes.
And Lisa Flanagan, yes. So those are approved. All right. So next we're going to go on to, we've got a lot of correspondence tonight. Janet, do you have a list of, I mean, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 correspondence to talk about tonight.
You had listed 5 to me, but you can go through them and I'll see what I can find out. What?
Okay. So it was Crystal Dion about the Dunkin' Donuts at 25 King Street. Katrina Wilcox Hagbird about the high school parties. Vaughn Cook regarding the urgent matter impacting students, and Jennifer Fife regarding Air Road. And then there was the handwritten letter that I think you passed off to Phyllis.
Yes, that's what I have as well.
Okay. Do you guys have these letters, or should I briefly go over them?
They were in everybody's packets.
Okay.
Do we have to read them, Janet?
No, you don't have to read them.
Okay.
Read them out loud. All right, so I'll start with the Dunkin' Donuts. Jim, there was some questions about employees wearing masks there. And I guess the other one too, the the 5th one was the woman at Kelly Carter about Village Green. And these are all mask wearing issues. So I don't know if, Jim, is this still something that you can still go make little visits to and request people to, reevaluate their mask wearing policies?
If I can, I'll start with 25 King Street first. So my understanding reading the complaint was, I think most people had their mask on, but one person kind of behind the counter either had their mask down on their nose or down on their chin. And so I went and spoke with the manager at the Dunkin' Donuts and explained that, everybody needs to have their masks on all the time. I understand the need for maybe to have a break from wearing your mask. I says, but the people really need to step out of the building and be away from people and away from the food service operation to be able to do that. So if we continue to get complaints, I'll go back. The state Department of Labor and Standards has an escalating enforcement protocol in place that boards of health could use. And it essentially is, the idea is to get compliance. So you go down and you talk with the folks first. If that doesn't seem to work, you put it in writing and say, hey, look, this is what you need to do. Here are the requirements. If that doesn't seem to work, you can issue them an order. And after that order is issued, if they don't comply, then you can fine them. You have to fine them at least up to 3 times. Then you can seek a cease and desist in court if you wanted to. So they have that protocol in place for people to kind of take those steps if you need to. So. Okay.
So that's for food service.
Yep.
There was another letter regarding apartment complex and the mailroom and the hallways within the buildings.
So received, I think, 2 complaints from one person and maybe one other complaint from a different person. I'm not sure if the name's all the same because I think the first one, they didn't provide a name, so I'm not sure if it's the same person. And the kind of the crux of the concern is that people aren't wearing masks in the common area, not consistently. So the first time I went over, when we got the complaint over and talked to the management, brought them signs so they could post them, explained to them that they really need to try to get people to do that. The second time I got it, and at that point, I think I actually put together a memo for the management company that they could they could actually, I guess, have a way of sending the message out to all of their tenants. So they actually sent that message out. The second complaint, which is the one I think you're probably talking about now, very similar to the first one. the signs, what I did was I went out again, spoke with management, walked through the common areas. They are posted. What makes it a little confusing, the state has a mask or a face covering FAQ. And in there, they talk about, there is a question about apartment buildings. And the language in there is that masks don't need to be worn in your apartment, but they should be worn in the common areas. And so that makes it a little more difficult to do enforcement on. I want to try to reach out to some of the larger communities that have multi-family and see what they're doing with regards to trying to get people to wear masks more, in the common areas. Again, I'll have to say, for all of those buildings since March, I've gotten 3 complaints. 2 I know are from the same person. So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
No, I don't want to interrupt the flow, but to me, there's a big difference between the donut operation and the housing complex.
correct.
And I asked earlier, do you have any clues about the trail, tracing upticks and all the rest? Do you have any associations between upticks in the past and shall we say places that have what we'll call higher than usual traffic for food? Because this is the closest we get. This is the closest we get to a college campus. Okay, is a place for coffee and donuts and other fast food place, in and out, in and out, in and out. And generally, square footage is not all that great. Ventilation may be questionable, and on and on and on and on. And backroom kitchens and the whole thing. So what I'm asking is, it's not because I'm looking to punish anyone, but we are slowly losing patience, I think, or not we, but the town may be losing patience with a lot of this stuff. And I want to make sure that we alert people rather graphically about some of the risk taking associated with these places if they don't, shall we say, comply. So that's why I asked you about, particularly about the donut place. Is there any indication at all that a place like that in town has been in the past a source of uptake?
I would say, based on the notes that I've read now, I won't say that I've read every single note, but
Right.
Again, as people ask, or if you start to see a couple in a week, you start to take a look at the notes, see if they're related, see if they're, what may be common amongst them. And I can say that I haven't seen that any of them have been related to food service or Dunkin' Donuts in general. So,
Okay, thanks.
yep. And just because you haven't had correspondence for it yet, we still get complaints. The state has a couple of different complaint hotlines that people can file complaints with. I think one with the Division of Labor and Standards. I think Department of Public Health may have one too. So we received a complaint about, again, mask concerns at the supermarket. I went up, spoke with the manager. What I usually do with those complaints is go and walk the store, see if I can identify the complaint, if it's actually happening, then speak with the manager to kind of explain that I've received a complaint and kind of what I saw in the store. So I was up there yesterday speaking with them, and he'll address, it's an ongoing thing, but he'll address that with staff.
Great. Okay. Anybody have anything particular that they want to discuss with the other correspondence that we have? I think I'll start with the Jennifer Fife on 9 Sleigh Ride Lane in Littleton. It's about the 9 Air road site, soil removal and commercial activity. I think Chuck DeCoste at one of the select board meetings said that he was going to look into that. I don't know if Jennifer's in the audience at all.
She is not.
Okay.
I think they talked about it at, I don't know if it was the last Board of Selectmen, but maybe the one before that.
Yeah, not this week, but the week before.
Madam Chair, I read that letter and I was just really disturbed by it. And I mean, I think that we should do everything in our power to minimize any adverse environmental effects these folks are feeling, especially whereas we're at the tail end of the summer here and these kids will probably benefit physically, for their physical health and mental health by just being able to play outdoors without having a dust storm or feel like there's an earthquake going on or a bunch of noise next door. I just read the letter, and having kids, like, I totally understand where she's coming from. And I don't think it's, appropriate to have that in your backyard when you have however many kids she has in that neighborhood. I just think it's not the right place. Maybe in the middle of winter when no one's outside. I think it's fair.
Yeah, Jim, I have a question for Jim. Any connection with this one? Isn't there a particular area of jurisdiction the Board of Health does have on what we'll call breathing quality?
I knew I shouldn't have sent you that document.
No, I'm glad you did. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding, Mike. So yes, so the Department of Environmental Protection has regulations. They're air pollution control regulations, 310 CMR 7, and those regulations do allow the boards of health to enforce, situations that the term is situations that cause a condition of air pollution. And that's defined, that term is defined in the regulations. So I can certainly follow up on the writer of the letter, go out and see if we can document and see if those conditions exist. I can certainly talk to Mr. DeCoste. It sounds like they were working on that too. And I can report back to the board.
Yeah. With all due respect to the Board of Selectmen, I still think that it's our responsibility, from my read of the Apocrypha, that we ought to visit the site and talk not only to the folks who are having the problem, but also make your own independent professional assessment with whatever tools as soon as possible, because I have no difficulty in having them, either be warned that they're in violation or whatever is necessary to address this. I don't. Yeah.
I'm sorry, if I have questions when we're dealing with odor, noise, or dust, I usually call our partners at the state Department of Environmental Protection for their advice. And they even have a sound meter if we need to borrow a sound meter that would work in court. So I can bounce it off the reps at Department of Environmental Protection too. So.
How about dust?
Yeah, so the air pollution control regulations also include dust.
Yep.
Dust is up. There's where noise actually has a standard, dust is more subjective. So yeah.
How about air pollution particles per? I think it's per 20 liters. I mean, there's a standard for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the part that I'm certainly, if I take a meter out there, I can read the number and I can tell you if it's 10 decibels above the background noise.
Yeah.
With the dust, I don't have equipment. I'm not sure DP has equipment to make that determination.
Ooh.
But I could certainly.
They ought to lease some. Okay.
I mean, I think it'd be great for these folks to get some sort of remedy in the next, 45, 60 days. Like, let the kids play outside for the rest of the summer when it's warm out. I just don't see the sense in holding it up with red tape and bureaucracy when these people obviously pay good taxes and just want the right to have their kids play outside and go swim in the pool and not be in a dust storm or in the middle of what sounds like New York City.
We have Matthew Nordhaus here. It looks like he's got his hand raised. Maybe he could update us what the select board is talking about.
Great. Okay, Matthew, do you have information about this discussion that we're talking about?
Hello, can you hear me?
Barely.
Hi, sorry, I'm far from the camera. We had an update from the Fields, who are the developers. There was an agreement put in place between the Fields and the town that had set some limits on noise and dust. They have monitoring equipment in place there for both. And we got an update a few days ago, I believe it was maybe late last week, with a report that stated basically, the noise is loud, but within tolerances, and the dust has not gone over the limit, and they've taken this many cubic yards of fill out of the site. Before you bring your equipment, Jim, or go to that trouble, you could probably speak to Joe, our interim town administrator, and get the information from him on what their required to comply with. And then if the Board of Health has more stringent controls than the town has put in place, we are getting calls and letters from the residents on Sleigh Ride Lane on a weekly basis, and it sounds like life is pretty miserable there for them, whether or not the fields are complying. So if this board would like to look into this and can do anything about it, I think they would appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Matthew, can I just ask who performed the tests and made the report?
So the field, so I believe there's a engineering firm that and I don't know who hired it, who has installed the devices and has supplied the data. I don't actually know who is collecting it and making sure that they're within limits. I can't answer that question.
This is Mike. Jim, let me encourage you to ignore the data from those instruments, which I can tell you from past experience. I'd like to see you, as it were, as someone professional and, shall we say, neutral on the ground.
Sure. So I'll go up and take a look, and I'll talk to Joe and see what they have in place and what they've asked the operators.
Yeah. But what I'm saying, that unless it's independent of the contractor and independent of the owners of the properties in question, in other words, it's got to be sort of someone who's at arm's length from both parties and working directly from state regulation.
Sure.
And also from medical. If any of the residents, for example, have had family members examined or basically brought to physicians, and the physicians have notes indicating distress for any of the kids, that's just enough to trip the wire.
Like a second opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So there's some hands up, other hands up regarding this issue. Janet, anybody else up?
I'm muting myself. Yes, there's a Dan Kane with their hands up.
Yes, good
Dan.
evening, Dan Kane, Whitetail Way. I just had a quick observation. Certainly, noise and air quality complaints fall completely under the authority of the Board of Health. Certainly the Board of Selectmen can take whatever action they'd like to, but ultimate responsibility and authority, independent of any other town agency, is the Board of Health responsibility. Both to acknowledge the report, investigate the report, and take appropriate action, whether that's using DEP standard regulation, or certainly the Board of Health independently can create town level regulation, as long as it goes through the normal regulation process, to both respond to and limit noise and air and odor complaints. So that certainly you can work with the Board of Selectmen and the contractor, but ultimately it is the Board of Health responsibility. I do know from past experience that many boards of health, to help cover the cost of this, if the complaint is found to be at least reasonable on the surface, can order the producer of the nuisance to basically pay for an independent external assessment. So that way the Board of Health doesn't have to cover the cost, but that the not responsible party, but the party who's potentially responsible, it will have to pay for an independent lab to conduct the investigation as far as air quality or noise, those pieces. And it's been very successful in supporting the court in the past. So this is an opportunity for the board to both take action without incurring additional expenses. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Can I just,
Sure, Kevin.
what happens if they're found not to be in violation? Who covers the costs then? Mr. Kane.
Am I still on? I don't think so. Am I still on?
You're on, yeah.
I'm on. Sorry about that. Certainly in my past experience, it basically comes down to a cost of doing business. It is their responsibility that if, that first piece, so Jim goes out and goes,
No, we lost you.
Yeah, we lost him. He was lost, Janet.
Oh, but it looks like Corey's.
Did they switch places?
Yeah, it looks like somebody switched.
Sorry, I'm working on it. All right.
Okay, any other questions from the board before we ask for?
He's back.
Hands back. Yeah.
Kevin?
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I'm not sure you lost me. From my experience in the past, is that basically comes down to the cost of doing business. If that initial investigation, Jim goes out and says, "Yep, there's dust everywhere. Yep, I can smell an odor. Yep, I'm identifying a potential issue." Then that next piece goes. It's up to the potential responsible party to be ordered to help mitigate that. And part of that first mitigation process is identifying, are you actually within the criteria or not? And that's part. If they're not, if they are, then they've proven that they're compliant. That's part of doing business. If the investigation shows that they are not compliant, then that's obviously they're at fault and need to mitigate it per Board of Health or whatever those orders are to mitigate the issue.
Yeah, I just don't want to see the town administrator making a decision. I want to make sure that Jim gets a chance to get in there.
Well, in accordance with those regulations, the board can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
your
great.
board can order if you need to.
Yep.
All right, any other board comments before we take some more member comments on this issue?
It's like, oh, well, how did
Janet, did you say there's somebody else up with their hands raised regarding the Air Road construction area?
Nope, that's the last one.
Okay. So Jim, thank you. You'll look into that for us?
Yep.
Awesome. The last two correspondents I have, I don't know if anybody, I think Katrina Wilcox Hagberg was on. Did anybody have any questions or comments regarding her letter? Regarding recent concern about recent high school parties?
Definitely concerns. I don't have answers. I feel like that's something we should figure out amongst our board members. And Mike, do you have any thoughts on that?
High school students, whether or not they're having parties.
No, they're having parties.
Oh, little angels.
Okay, so this comes back to what I would call the perennial Jim question. That is, okay, we have to do everything after the fact because we don't have testing. So it's sort of like whack-a-mole. So the thing is that if we can't establish the fact that as a result of having these quote parties, whether they're occurring in frequently enough and high enough density, somebody has to unfortunately show the symptoms before we can act.
That is FDA approved, that testing I sent over to you. So take a read of that. I'd like to hear your opinion.
Okay.
So I think in that letter, Lisa, if I'm not mistaken, I think she was, kind of explaining the concerns around these parties and then kind of commenting that she was impressed by the police department. I'm not sure it's a selectman who kind of, got out there with a message to kind of explain to people the concerns.
Yeah. I wish they included us on it too.
Yeah, because during the meetings with the school committee, we were very clear about making sure the message got through to the parents and as well as the students that no parties.
Right.
At least 3 times.
All right. Any other questions from the board members before is Katrina on the line, Janet? I thought I saw her earlier.
Yeah, she is. Would you like me to allow her to?
Any other questions regarding this from the board before we ask public comment? You guys all good?
Yep.
Okay.
Katrina is here.
Great.
Hi.
Thanks for your letter.
Yeah, I didn't expect you guys to have any like brilliant ideas of how to stop kids from being kids. I did like that the police department and the school committee got on board to release the message preemptively, given the news of other towns in Massachusetts having to close remotely. And I just would encourage more collaborations between your board and the school committee and the police department. And in particular, when I'm looking forward, I'm thinking Halloween's probably the next big party weekend. I know parties are happening now, but like looking forward for another bout of messaging in the next month to remind people that there are ways to enjoy Halloween in a safer way. And getting that into the hands of kids versus and parents.
Right.
Ms. Hagberg, do you think that the Sudbury event has, shall we say, broadcasted the consequences of irresponsibility?
I do think it has maybe made some impression on some parents who would, but maybe not the ones who are the right parents, the ones who are throwing parties. And maybe it's not just the parents, the kids do this too, covertly behind parents' backs. So again, I think like this is an ongoing, it's always an issue. So an ongoing education of why we need to rethink how we're gathering these days, just given COVID.
Right. I think you brought up the subject about Halloween. I mean, I see on Facebook a lot of people wondering if it's even going to happen. Maybe that's something that I don't know if I want to be the person that cancels Halloween, but
I actually have some, this is probably part of the task force conversation that I think is going to come up later. I'm an epidemiologist and I've kind of been doing some messaging on Facebook, trying to like find ways for people to enjoy holidays in ways that are responsible and fun and distanced and layers of risk mitigation strategies without, if you fully cancel something, then it's going to happen behind your back anyway. Kind of the go behind closed doors issue. So I don't know. I think there's a way. I think there's a way to trick or treat with less risk than there is no like huge costume parties and I don't know, haunted houses and things like that, especially indoors. So, and we can get to that later, but I do think it would be great if Board of Health and the school committee and the police department could collaborate heading into Halloween with some advanced messaging of expectations and reminders.
okay, great. I can get in touch with Matt and Mike and see if they can include us and everything too.
Maybe we can put that on the agenda for next week to
In
talk
the next
about it.
meeting in 2 weeks.
Yes.
And I'll see if we can see if they can get to the meeting.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Katrina. This might be also on the task force. The next correspondence was from,
Lisa, excuse me.
oh yeah, sorry, Janet. Yep.
Their hand up. Matthew, Christine, and Peter Nordhaus have their hand up.
Okay. Who's asking the question?
Christine Nordhaus, Star Hill. Just a suggestion as you go into that messaging with the police department and the school committee. Our kids' college busted up some parties. The Spokane, Washington Police Department busted up a couple of college parties and gave each of the offenders a $1,000 ticket, a fine for breaking the law, and then there were no more parties. So I think that it was, and I can't imagine how hard I would kill my kid if he were one of the people to receive a $1,000 fine. And I'm not suggesting a $1,000 fine, but I am suggesting some sort of a, a response to these repeated violations might be in order at this point. Thank you.
Wasn't it Northeastern that just told kids that they weren't going to get their
30
tuition back?
Really?
It was one of the colleges in Boston that said if you got caught having a party and you were expelled, you wouldn't be getting your semester back. So
They ended up giving it the money back after all.
they did, yeah. Okay. And the next correspondence is from Vaughn Cook. And again, like I started to say, this might be regarding this. There's a lot of information in this letter. It might be the task force. It might be related to more task force discussion. You want me to read it?
That was the one regarding eating lunch in the classrooms?
Want to inform you of published research that impacts the health and safety of students and staff at Littleton Public Schools. As an educator, I'm keenly aware of the importance of educating our students. Oh gosh, it got cut off. As a science educator, I am also aware that concerned about the health risks to students and staff during the pandemic. Specific concern, airborne transmission of COVID-19 in terms of droplets and specifically aerosols resulting from normal classroom discussion, the school policy for protection against the transmission. It got cut off, sorry, from the policy at the middle school is for students to eat lunch in the classrooms without wearing masks and with minimal supervision. Immediately following the activity, the classroom, oh yeah, it was about eating lunch in the classroom and then having the next group of kids come in. So
Is there something about like kids? Why can't the kids sanitize their own desks? Or is that, did I read that somewhere else? Maybe somewhere else.
I contacted the chairman of the school committee and also the super, and they've changed their policy. They're going to be eating either outside or they've opened up the cafeteria areas and the windows and have them spread out. They've changed the schedule to accommodate this. So
Great.
they have attempted, let me be clear, that these are all first time events for lots of people.
exactly.
So these are,
Never
you know,
been through a pandemic before.
and just let me just say something before we get further about aerosols and all the rest, is that if you're really seriously doing a test of the role of aerosols, whether it's the diameter, travel distance, net weight, and all the rest, the only way you could really do that is really almost in the borders of being unethical. You can't really do a test with humans at the other end who are uninfected and see what happens when someone who's infected launches. Okay, it's what they do is they stick out incubators and petri dishes and other things to see what lands, and that's the simulation. And the other thing is that in order to get the aerosols to carry something, you have to have someone already infected who then can eject an aerosol. Again, we have no testing to know for sure, but hopefully everybody who comes in is either really asymptomatic or doesn't have the disease at all in the schools.
Mhm. And if parents and kids are being vigilant and doing their job, they won't be going to school.
Right.
Sick.
And most of the papers, if you look at them, and there's one review that came out with, I don't know, I think I saw 68 references. Most of those do not involve the kind of experiment you would do to basically be able to say, should you be at 6 feet, 10 feet, or 20 feet, nor is aerosols the only factor determining if aerosol borne viruses are successful in basically causing a subsequent infection on a recipient. There are a couple of steps in between, including what goes on in the throat, what goes on in the nose. It's, as usual, it's biology 101.
We are so lucky to have you on this board, Mike.
No, you're not. If I weren't here, you'd get through with the meetings in about half the time.
No. All right, does anybody have any other questions or comments?
No.
New COVID numbers are out for today, finally.
Sorry, Kevin?
New COVID numbers just got released like 10 minutes ago for the day.
What's Littleton look like?
I was just looking at the Mass, new cases in Mass, 542.
What's the number of tests?
Yeah, it's slow. It's called slow burn.
Number of tests, new individuals tested by molecular test, 20,662.
Okay. I think that number is important, and I can't explain why. I mean, I've seen that number as high. The number of tests performed as high as almost 30,000.
Okay.
And I think over the weekend it dropped down to 10,000. So I don't know what accounts for that swing.
Huh.
Okay, so should we move on to member comments? I think this is where we should probably talk about your Your task force, Kevin?
Oh, yeah. So at that joint school committee meeting, I just had the thought that, it might be a good idea to get together a task force of good, smart local folks that have experience in the medical, biological, statistical industries and sort of deal with it on the day-to-day. And then Mr. Castillo, John Castillo, reached out, I believe, to you, Lisa, about taking interest in sort of putting said task force together. And Ms. Painter and Corey Painter, Katrina Hagberg, and a couple other folks, Mr. Castillo referenced, would be interested in doing this sort of thing as well, to not only just sort of collect the data on a day-to-day basis and analyze it and interpret it and help our town sort of stay a step ahead of things beyond what the state guidance might be, but also to provide, educational information to residents where, like, yeah, trick-or-treating, here's probably the best way, we can do this and all be safe, or provide some sort of like question and answer setup where, why is it 6 feet? Why is it not 3 feet? And just sort of those frequently asked questions, just sort of put them out there and get them out there and provide, I don't know, some sort of level of comfort for folks, and help us to protect the public health, and maybe report to us on a weekly basis, just as far as like trying to make the best efforts to put together a crystal ball. Tingsborough's red, Marlboro's red. It's coming at us from all angles. How much time do we have? What do we have to do? Where do we have to do it? And just that they're on the front lines, and we all get together every 2 weeks, and we get letters emailed to us all the time. But these folks are, like, Katrina's an epidemiologist. Corey Painters, she works at MIT and has day-to-day experience with the COVID data, as well as Mr. Castillo. He's a PhD. These guys are way smarter than I am, and I just think that it would be really helpful to have some good folks to volunteer their time to sort of help us and guide us and provide us with the information, as well as provide our community with the information that can sort of help us to stay a step ahead. Not rely on hospital cases, because that's too late, but figure out the criteria where, okay, here's the metric that we really need to focus on to figure out that, hey, if the teachers get sick, then kids aren't going to school at all, and now the parents can't go to work. So that's, we need to make sure that doesn't happen, I think first. But I'd love to open up the conversation and see what you guys think, and then maybe put together a plan and put together some deliverables on a weekly basis where we can appoint some folks from the school committee. Maybe Mr. Zeldin might want to be a part of it. The more information, the better, and the more people that are behind it and teamed up to do better for our community and protect the public health. I think we'll all be in better shape for it.
Do you have any idea where you're going to publish this, Kevin? Is this going to be just on our website or an independent thing, or?
I mean, I feel like this task force is something that can serve not only the Board of Health, but, the school committee, Parks and Rec, any real town board or association that has anything going on, even Council on Aging, like here are things that you guys can do to protect your public health and your mental health. We know you don't feel comfortable going to the store. Well, here's some folks that might be able to help you get your food. I think that the possibilities are endless, and I think all we need to do is sort of give it a shot and put our best foot forward and try and get something done here.
Anybody else have any comments before we talk to Kevin's group there?
Yeah, I'm always interested. I'm always concerned about what we don't know, and in particular, what I don't know. And I'm also concerned about what I don't know. Okay. the problem the issue for me is that there are many dimensions to this between the virus and the disease and everything in between. So I'd like to see the task force, if we have one, focus on, shall we say, a top priority or top priority items that are maximum beneficial to the community at large.
But right now,
For example, and that would be, I'll just pull it out of the hat, is Halloween. And also the other part of it, which is remarkably unforthcoming, except from certain sources, the consequence of having none of the vaccines currently under clinical trial are being tested in children, so they can't be administered to children. So that it becomes an interesting public health issue everywhere. And so little or no guidance is being provided about that. And I think it's very difficult to assess this, even if you are, quote, an expert, unquote. And the other thing, too, is that I would certainly hope the task force is comprised exclusively of people who actually have either published in or have had 5+ years in infectious diseases, and have had some experience in being able to understand, to use, shall we say, numerical analysis and other modeling to answer very specific questions like, should I send the kids out for trick-or-treating? Okay, these are not easy things to do. And also, I'm always looking for complementary sources of information from our friends at the CDC and from other universities. So it's, or from other universities and other research centers. But in the end, to be perfectly miserable about the whole thing, until we get to the point of a vaccine or combination of vaccine and therapy, we're all running experiments.
Right.
So let's not expect too much of any task force to crack the nut.
The advice, and we don't have to follow it, but I think the more information, the better. Just to take it into account and run it through the machine and see what.
I'm curious, are the folks in the audience, are the folks who are interested in being on a task force, I'd be interested, given their professional background, how they see best use of their time and know-how assessed against, shall we say, the problem.
That might be the perfect segue to.
I was wondering too that, like Kevin, you were talking about such a broad amount of information. Yeah. Is there a way that we can narrow it down? Like Mike was saying, safety for the kids, getting that testing available to the schools at a minimal fee for the town.
Yeah, in my conversation with Mr. Castillo and Mrs. Painter today, they seem to have some fantastic ideas on how to focus our efforts and deal with like the emergent issues at hand, all the while sort of planting the seeds for solutions to future problems that they can foresee through the data that they're presented with every day. I'd love to hear the comments from Corey Painter and Jonathan Castillo.
Yeah. It would help me a lot. It would help me a lot, at least, if each person could just briefly describe their experience in infectious diseases outside the confines of a laboratory.
Lisa, maybe do you want to ask them to comment? I don't know.
Jonathan Castillo has his hand.
Well, wait a minute. Does Louise or Jim have any questions or comments about potential task force?
I was going to also comment on giving them a narrower set of problems, but which you already talked about, Lisa. I don't have any others questions.
Jim, do you have any guidance on this at all?
I guess two things. One, there is some pretty good guidance from CDC about Halloween up on their website.
Awesome.
They kind of rank activities higher risk, medium risk, and lower risk. So you could use that. Parents could certainly use that to kind of inform the decision on what they want to do. That question has been asked by a number of health agents because they're getting asked that in their communities. I'll probably send something off to you based on that CDC guidance shortly, Lisa.
Okay, that'd be great.
And then as far as the task force, I think it'd be great to have additional information. As public health officials, we're generalists. And so having more specific information would be helpful. I guess the only caution is that we do work within regulatory frameworks, and we do need to keep that in mind.
Okay. Any other questions before we go to, I don't know, what do you call them, the panelists or the potential task force members? Anybody?
Audience.
Okay, so any hands up, Janet?
Kevin Davis has his hand up.
Okay, Kevin, state your name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Kevin Davis. I would actually defer
Kevin?
Whitetail Way. Sorry, can you hear me? So I'd actually like to defer until Mr. John Castillo actually talks first, and then I'll follow up afterwards, if that's okay with the group.
Sure. Is he got his hand up? Is he here?
Jonathan?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Jonathan Castillo, Richard Way. So as Kevin mentioned, several of us have talked about this idea of a task force. And I guess first to begin with, Mike, my background is in, I guess my background training is in immunology and virology. My specialty training was in understanding immune responses to respiratory viral infections. And I am currently working at a small biotech company in Watertown that is focused on developing small molecule therapeutics to respiratory viruses such as RSV and SARS-CoV-2. So with the idea of the task force, when we were thinking about it, was to provide just as a resource for the Board of Health and, I guess what other groups would be interested in helping to understand, I guess, different aspects of COVID-19 and trying and help digest all the massive information that's been coming out, because this is unprecedented. The amount of how fast things are going, how much information is coming out on a daily basis, it's just hard to keep track of. And I would imagine from the Board of Health's point of view, there's just so much to try and take in and trying to figure out and how you would be able to apply that. So in essence, the concept of the task force would be there as an aid to the various committees and boards, on certain topics. Each of us have come up with sort of areas of concern or things that need to be addressed that we, and ways that we can mitigate some of the potential issues down the line, and that can be brought up later. But again, our view, at least my view for the task force was just to provide be as a resource that we can assist the various groups with. So I'll end there.
I have a question. I mean,
yes,
you said yourself that there's a massive amount of information that's changing on a daily basis. Is that something that you guys could possibly keep up with on a daily basis and keep us informed? I mean, you have day jobs, I assume. And how would you, like I asked Kevin, how would you publish it? Would it be on a website or would it be on TV? Send it home with kids at school? How would you get that information to people? And is there a way that we can narrow down some really important parts?
Well, I think one possible approach to this would be if the board has certain, like you're saying, special concerns that come about, and they would reach out to members of the task force to get their view or to find out more information, and we can come back and give our give our view on whatever topic is that your board or the school committee or whatnot has, and try and assist in that way. Alternatively, there are certain concerns or certain issues that we feel could be addressed, and we propose ideas on how we could potentially mitigate some of those things. So again, think of it as instead of being reactionary, but you're sort of addressing these potential issues now, identifying what potential problems might come about and trying to draw up plans of how we would deal with this. So that's, how I would see it.
Okay. And so are you thinking that you might want to come to the, at least our meeting, and then would we give the information to the school committee, or would you, would the task force be reporting to all the departments and all the committees?
I guess that's something to be determined.
Okay.
I'd spoken to Brad Austin today about potentially having the school committee nominate one of their members to join the task force, just because they could give their input on what they're seeing, and everybody could sort of have their input across boards. So I don't know how it gets reported, but maybe it's something that gets reported at a Board of Health meeting or a joint with the school, or maybe town administrator. I'm not sure. I haven't gotten that far.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm sorry, John, I'm sort of mystified because one of your pathways is where the board would ask a question, and then you feel the task force at this point would be in a position to respond. The very often, as you probably know from your experience, what the public wants to know or would like to know varies all over, from really pertinent drill questions that should be answered as opposed to others which should be answered mainly from a comfort, or shall we say, an understanding point of view. So I'm frankly a little bit more interested in what you see, and I don't mean to pick on you, it could be any one of the folks who are here. What do you consider as professionals in the area? What are the 2 or 3 areas that you forget about Halloween? It could be Halloween, but it doesn't have to be that general. What do you see as the biggest gap? I guess my view of the information that flows out about the virus and separately the disease itself, because to me they're two separate but related but related elements. What do you see as, shall we say, the 3 or 4 burning questions that the public should really understand at this point in time, pre-vaccine, let's put it that way?
So I guess to your question, I guess you can view it in multiple layers. Let's put it that way. In one aspect, in relation to the virus and the subsequent disease that is affiliated with it, there's still a lot that's unknown in terms of the long-term effects. Okay, so we have, I guess when you look at it in terms of during the course of the normal virus life cycle in a patient, a person gets infected and hopefully they'll eventually clear it. But I think the jury's still out as to what may be the long-term consequences of this process in certain individuals down the line. So it's still too early to tell. We don't have enough. There's not enough data that's being. The data is being collected now, but it's still too early to tell. What if there's any long-term effects from the SARS-CoV-2 infection. So in that, keeping that in mind, I'm not saying this is happening here in Littleton, but I think if we look at this in a broader sense, I think with the way that some other areas of the country have opened up, I think they've sort of maybe not kept lost track of that or not thought about that. So I guess that's one of the concerns that I guess many people in the field have about just the what's going to happen long term. Like is there anything long-term consequences? I guess one of my concerns and one of the things that I like to see addressed possibly in a better way would be the contact tracing. So fortunately we don't necessarily need that right now, but as you know, with the winter time coming in, more things coming in indoors, I think if this with way the public school system is set up here in Littleton and some of the surrounding areas, I think we need to have a better approach to doing the contact tracing. And I think, part of the, things that the task force could do would be to identify possibly, better approaches to implementing a good contact tracing strategy. And there are some folks in the in our town that have a very good understanding and very and very hands-on experience in how this could be done. And Kevin Davis, who had just called in prior to me, is someone who might be able to assist with that and provide very knowledgeable insight as to how we could do this in a good manner. And then I guess the other thing to that I guess is a concern would be just how we are, what's our cutoff point. So Kevin had brought this up before about, what the metrics that are currently being used in terms of hospitalizations. I think that's something that, we need to possibly take another look at and reevaluate. So Michael, I hope that answers your questions, Mike.
Yeah, you had some points in there that I think, especially the contact tracing, because it leads back to testing.
Mike, I had proposed at the school committee meeting of the idea of trying to do some of testing of the different cohorts and the staff. Right, I guess we're trying to look in. There are some people, there are some folks that are trying to look into that, and I think as more things come about, that might open up a little more. But at the moment, there's nothing that's really coming to light that we'd be able to apply, or at least we've been able to see. So, but it's still being explored.
Again, I don't want to keep asking the question, but is there someone in the group that you have in mind or that have come forward that I'm very pleased to have? The idea of cohort testing is extremely important and can be very useful, especially to communities like ours. And I just find it very frustrating myself that the state is, whatever reason, the resources and or the attitude, I can't tell which, even though they're encouraged to do it by their advisors very strongly. I can testify to that yet the amount of testing, for all it is concentrated in places, understandably, where the rate of infection per 100,000 is way, way above anything that we're seeing at the moment. So in other words, there's a downside of appearing to be successful. So I'm looking to you to, as it were, on the prevention side, so that we don't slip into the yellow flashing light.
Understood. And again, in an ideal situation, if we could implement something similar to what Northeastern University has, of having weekly testing done of the students and staff, so as to enable the identification of individuals who are potentially positive and not allow them to attend classes, so we don't run into a situation where you have the spreading event. Ideally, that would be the best case scenario. But as it stands right now, to find the testing agencies and to implement some sort of strategy to have that put into place right away, it's difficult, and we're still exploring it.
Yeah, well, as it may be worthwhile in the long run, especially after the vaccine becomes available, or as we're getting closer to it, because of the severe limitations of the vaccines themselves. I think you're onto something.
Lisa, you're muted.
Yep. Jim, do you have any comments? Louise? Not
at this point.
Okay. I think it's very good information that we get. The question is, Kevin, if you like to invite somebody that you think is worth it to listen to, maybe they can come as a speaker, give them 15 minutes.
We have
Okay.
some more people. We have some more people with their hands raised that I think that are interested in this topic too. So we'll move on to that. Is that all right, Gino?
Thank you.
So, Janet, anybody, there were some other people, I think. Corey Painter, Kevin, you mentioned her.
Yeah.
Corey Painter is on right now.
Hi,
Great.
Corey Painter from Foster Street here in Littleton. I just want to thank the board, everybody here, for your willingness to consider having a task force for the town. And I've talked with John and Katrina, who's also here on the meeting, just about the notion of seeing if we could bring to bear our background and expertise to just be of service to you as you're grappling with these tremendously difficult times. And I just want to say, I think we're maximally flexible to meet you where you need the help. And much to Mr. Zeldin's point, we should look for the places where there's the greatest unmet need, and then try to supplement your knowledge base with whatever we can and whatever we have at our disposal. My background, I have a PhD in biochemistry and from an immunology lab. And then I'm now at the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard doing cancer genomic research, but I'm also part of an international consortium called the Cancer and COVID-19 Consortium, where we collect data from cancer patients who also have COVID internationally, and then analyze and publish that data. So I have published extensively on COVID, both from the biochemistry, but also from the infectious point of view. And as a result of that, just reading the literature every morning over a cup of coffee. So can you keep up with the vast amount? Absolutely not. But you can take a look at the trends that are coming out, and even just by the questions that scientists themselves are asking, or the case reports that are being published daily. And so just if you had questions about like what are the trends, or what does it mean, or how does the virus work, or how does the vaccine work? Is it, because there's a lot of differences with this vaccine versus every other type of vaccine. It's a completely different vector, and people, the Board of Health may be interested in some of those differences, and or what's in the published literature. How do you interpret something? Why did the CDC change their guidelines? Things of that nature. If you all had questions there, I think it would be good to have us like pre-assembled so that we could come to meet you wherever you are, in addition to the much more kind of tangible needs, like figuring out Halloween, and or not figuring it out, but giving guidance to you based on interpretations of the CDC guidelines, as well as anything else that may be out there and known. And I just want to say that probably the most important thing that the task force can do is really come together in order to support Katrina, who is probably in the waiting room and going to speak next, in terms of the great work she's already doing for the town, and just making sure that she's properly supported, and we can assist her in the epidemiology that she's already kind of providing for the school committee. That the stuff she's doing, in my opinion, is probably the most important thing that the town could rally around, in terms of keeping us safe, in terms of ensuring that we see the trends as they're seeable. And then also between John, myself, and Katrina, and as well as I'm sure other people from the town that may be listening here and wanting to contribute, if there's a way to find ourselves to a good testing situation, I think we're all aligned that that's the best way forward. Figuring out the best, most robust testing, protecting our teachers, protecting the students, and protecting our town by just seeing if we can push the envelope instead of waiting passively for something to come to us, is something that I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Corey. Any questions for Corey before we go on to probably Katrina? Okay. Janet, is Katrina still on?
Hi, I'm Katrina Wilcox Hagberg at Hartwell Avenue. Thank you, Corey, for the kind words you just shared. I actually spoke to Jim Gareffi back in March when he was preparing your weekly COVID reports that got posted on the website. So I've actually kind of started this back in March, and then because everyone was just asking me questions about epidemiology. So I'm an epidemiologist. I have been working and doing disease and drug epi research for 13 years. And before that, I did clinical trials. And I have a background in biology as well. So I'm well situated to read and understand the literature that's coming out. While I'm not an infectious disease expert, I do have the skills that I can lend to that framework as well. And I've been following this from the beginning pretty in-depthly. So what has kind of come down from everything is that early on, everyone was asking me for advice and can you help me interpret this? Putting a lay person's framework on the information that was coming at us, especially as we were coming out of the shutdowns, and saying, what is it that I can do to protect myself and my family? And at that point, I was reading every CDC guidance, every WHO guidance, any state guidance, looking at the MMWR reports that come out, seeing where contact tracing was showing that there was problems and what mitigation strategies seem to be helping, where there are studies that show what helps and what doesn't. So I've used all of that stuff and kind of compiled it, and then tried to help my friends and family and anyone who will listen to figure out ways to still be able to go out and socialize and do so in a safer manner. And then in addition, when the school was starting to talk about reopening plans for the fall, I've been attending every single meeting and behind the scenes trying to help give them information that would be relevant to school openings, anything I could get my hands on. In addition, as they were trying to figure out rates in our area, and at the time that the state started doing the weekly reports that just came out for like today, they weren't sure how to use them. So I was trying to help educate our school committee on how to interpret what Littleton's numbers mean. But since Littleton is small, any one jump kind of jumps us pretty far. So we're kind of unstable because our population is small. So ways to think about that more broadly. So we've ended up with a structure where we calculate the rates for just Littleton and then border communities. So that's Acton, Westford, all of our towns surrounding us who touch our border. And then we go one step out and do the surrounding communities, so a little bit broader search. And then we go, that's what we're calling the 495 belt, which is like Marlborough up to Tingsboro. So comparing the rates that, I actually calculate those rates based on the number that the state puts out every week, and try to provide an interpretive frame around it to help them understand what's happening in our area. We also do it for the county and the state level just to see. And you can kind of see things coming at us, like things are moving higher every week at this point, whereas 2 weeks ago they were stable. So
excuse me. Yeah. When you say, okay, yep. For purposes of this meeting, when you say everything, I'm not disputing something's going higher.
Yep.
What is the everything moving higher? What do you mean?
That was too general. I totally understand.
Okay.
I get you, Mike. Thank you for catching me on that.
No, I'm not trying to catch you. This is for my buddies on the thing.
Yes.
I mean, because they don't read this stuff.
One of the limitations of the weekly report that the state puts out is that there's a lot of gray and green around us. But when you look at the numbers week by week, you can see that the numbers are starting to tick higher. And that's 0.2. That's a jump by 1. Which means that while we're kind of slowly trending upward into territory we will expect to see higher as fall happens and we go indoors due to weather and things like that. This is expected based on what we've known about COVID and seen across the world. So I'm trying to frame how I'm saying this. So what I've been doing is putting together this
Katrina, can we talk nearly every day?
I wish I had data every day, Mike. I sadly am just as reliant on these weekly data like you are. I actually have a ton of questions for Jim, so I might call him later.
Yeah, I think you're landing on things that I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah, that's okay.
Okay, so you've become a powerhouse of one here.
I know that's the problem.
No, it isn't. Is it? I've talked to. It's interesting. Let me just also put in a boost for the best epidemiologists who are very, shall we say, very lucid about implications are all women. The men's
It is a field dominated by women, so
it should be.
That adds to it.
It
Yeah.
should be. Anyway, yes, you just landed on a point that has me greatly concerned about Little Littleton.
Yeah.
So please keep pushing. Keep
Yes.
going. Keep going. Keep going. You got me going. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to keep my plan is because this is what I've been doing. I know the school committee is kind of doing the rates on their own as well. I'm going to keep doing them myself because, in part because of my interest and my concern as an individual, in part because I sit as a library trustee, an elected official who's in charge of reopening the library. And also just because there are people in the school who are concerned. So as we did the school discussions, there's 2 thresholds that DESE put out as that they aligned with whether you could be fully opened, hybrid, or fully remote. And so the next thing I did was to look at those thresholds to say, how do they stand in the world when the US and what we're doing? And to be honest, they're conservative, which is great because that will help protect our public health and our town. So if we tip over to 8, we should be shut. We should be remote at that point to protect everyone in town, not just kids and families, in my opinion. And that aligns well with what we've seen in the data. So
could you just repeat that?
Sorry, did you just say 8? Like
Sorry.
8 students or 8?
no, a rate of, that's true. Thank you for clarifying that. So 8, an average of 8 daily cases over a 14-day period per 100,000. Yeah.
Okay. See, now we're into task force nightmares, which is okay.
But this is where like I will keep crunching the rates and I can advise based on all the things I know. It would be more helpful to have that come from with other people along with side me to talk about it and have some backup and some other brains involved. However, what I don't bring to the table is the vaccine conversations and other more technical pieces that Corey and John would bring.
Well, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm interrupting your time here. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, I think you're going to get even more important when the vaccines start to appear on the horizon for real. If and when they do. I have to ask you this. Have you read any of the protocols yet?
So that is has not been my focus. I've really, my time is kind of limited. So I've been trying to look at things what can we do now? Knowing that there are people who are much smarter than I am and much more involved in the vaccine front that I wish I had their expertise, but I don't and can't really speak to that.
Okay. So the next thing is that if we see numbers that are ticking up but have not hit the threshold of 8, which you were used, okay, wouldn't it be prudent before we hit 8 to, as it were, cut back on in-person learning?
I would hope that we would not hit 8 before we went to the full remote. Yes. I do also think there are things we can do to mitigate that getting to 8. And part of that is so the other part of my passion and time has been spent to try to tell people, educate people on, make sure you're wearing masks. What does a quality mask look like? So what matters when you wear a mask, and not just that you're wearing it, but it fits well and you have multi-layers and no valves. So like all those things. And then my next one was, the next one right now is Halloween, which thankfully the CDC came out with some really good guidances. Outlining what's less risky to most risky in terms of things, which I think you guys could use to put a forefront message out there saying, so the thing, not everyone's following the CDC or seeing their guidelines. So how can we message that out to get people to understand that you can still have fun, but you can do so at a lower risk to yourself and the community. So that's where I've been putting my time, is to crunch the rates, do the math, and then also to try to educate people on how to ways to mitigate risk of transmission, whether that's in the community or within families. The contact tracing showing family gatherings being one of the higher things across the United States. And so that, for my concern, that means Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's are a big thing on the horizon that we need to be advising people how to gather in ways that are less risky. So what is it that we can do to help educate people? I do love that you guys have some education things out on LCTV, and I just looked up the mask thing you posted on the website. I just don't know how many people see those in those locations. I don't know if there's a way to get something into the COA's broadcaster newsletter that would help seniors. Like, there are ways I just want to get the information out, and I don't know how to do that.
Do you get town water? I know it's an odd question. Do you get town water?
I do.
Okay. Well, the water department sends out these fancy newsletters.
All right. You can put the flyer in.
So what I'm suggesting, this is something you guys could mull over, but if we could mail to people who get town water, which is not everybody, but nearly everybody, that might help.
Yes, actually, that's a great way to reach everyone in town. I agree with you. So that's, in terms of the task force, I think there are some who are very technical and vaccine and forward looking, or lab testing. That would be a great place to have people putting energy. This is kind of where my passion and my niche is the rates themselves and educating people.
This would actually kind of make sense in narrowing down which one of you guys have an expertise, and just each of you picking a topic to report on. Kind of, is it right? You know what I mean? Instead of having all this massive information, each of you pick something that you're passionate about, and that you have the information that you can report to us on.
I would be happy to share what I'm calculating for the for the schools with you guys. I know they're before I do that, or actually I can do it after, but happy to share the rates that I'll calculate tomorrow. You guys could probably use them as well for what your activities are. The one issue is I'm not sure I can report to you at your meetings, because it does take me some time, and you guys are meeting, an hour after the rates get posted, or after they get posted after. So the weekly report from the DPH. So be happy to share what I can do at the time.
Do you have access to models that you really like that show as the rate changes over the acceleration rate? Okay, I'll use that without prejudice. Okay, do you have models from any of the locations around the world, including the US, where the rate was accelerating at rate Y, and they basically had, lots of infections following? I mean, what I'm looking for are early signs.
I personally do not have models. I know there are people who are modeling. That's a different discipline in epidemiology than I do. I can look into what is available that we might be able to apply to the information we do have.
Yeah, I was able to extract a few things out of some of the folks at Harvard, but the population's too big. Anyway, we're now down to the weeds. Sorry.
Our population is small. That does make it very hard. I know there are state modelers out there. Like UMass has some that were doing state level stuff. So I'm wondering, I haven't looked into that recently. We can go back to see what they're doing.
This all sounds great. Is there one more person with their hand up? Janet? Thank you, Katrina.
Yeah.
Thanks, Katrina. I want to get your phone number and text and all the rest. I can go back to
a new friend tonight, Katrina.
I can go back to my day job.
Kevin Davis.
Hi, my name is Kevin Davis. I'm at 35 Whitetail Way. I'm one of these behind the scenes people that has reached out to a bunch of people to lend my assistance. I've helped out Katrina with some of her, just saying, hey, can I help automate some of this from a computer science perspective? I have 25 years in computer science as a computer scientist and 18 years as a software test engineer and lead. And why that's important is that the company that I work for, the MITRE Corporation, has been working with the federal government and the state governments to come up with contact tracing apps so that the states don't have to spend millions of dollars to go create these things and do contact tracing. We've also reached out to Apple and Google and are working closely with them. And you may have noticed in the latest iOS update 13.7, this neat little thing called exposure notification settings that happened there. Not to say that we weren't instrumental, but yes, MITRE behind the scenes is very instrumental in a lot of the things that are happening out there, not only from contact tracing, but other technologies, including the plasmid donations, convalescent plasmid and stuff like that. So we are a not-for-profit and things like that. How I can and want to help this team out is, try to work with you guys on the contact tracing and exposure notifications. I have intimate detail and knowledge on all the technology that's there. We are currently testing a white labeled app. We are working with the state of Massachusetts, the state of Virginia, and a few other states in some of our efforts. And I hope to help Katrina out, crunch her numbers and make it more of an automated process that just updates things. So as we put the numbers in, it automatically goes through and populates the graphs so she doesn't have to spend the hours and the time calculating each one of those things. So that's my expertise. If you guys have any questions about contact tracing and the exposure notification APIs and things like that that are in everybody's phone now, not only it's iOS, but also Android, I'd be more than happy to talk about that.
Great. Anybody have any comments or questions to ask Kevin? Mike?
Just one. Somewhere between, someone has to decide if the numbers are good enough to provide the information, useful information, actionable information. So who would that be in your shall we say in your circle for Littleton? Let's put it the way, or anywhere.
So each of us have individual and unique skills that we're bringing to the table in this little organization. All of us have different skill sets, and I think each of us, like you were talking about before, have unique things that we can talk and bring about. For example, with the exposure notification stuff, how does Bluetooth and how do we get our students to enable this on each of their phones so that if somebody does report a positive test, that we can then go and start to do and help out the Board of Health to know these are the individuals that had close contact.
With Bluetooth, you can do that?
So you ready? Awesome. So the way that the exposure notification works is with Bluetooth, and it's enabled in each of the phones. And what's even more interesting is that we've run a whole bunch of models on how this works with some really smart computer scientists and some really smart electrical engineers and signal people. And we found out, we know the error rate, we know this, and we said, oh, you know what? Phones also have speakers and microphones that you can start to do ultrasonics with it. And then, oh, by the way, a phone has a gyroscope in it that can start to figure out the orientation of the phone in 3D space. So you start looking at these things, you start combining them together, and you start working with everybody. And you go from feet, like 6-7 feet error rates, down to 1.3 feet error rates when you start combining all these things together. So you can start to get very accurate in where your people are in space. It's also people worry about privacy protection and am I being tracked? We worked very hard with Google and Apple and all the other members of the COVID Awareness Alliance that MITRE is a member of. And we are using the MIT PACT API, which basically means that it's a privacy protecting thing. It uses encryption keys that are sent and randomized every day from every device onto something else. So that way the people's privacy is protected as it happens. The actual calculation is done on everybody's phone. It's not actually done on a server somewhere. So you're not, wanting to go and attack a specific server. The boards of health in the state of Massachusetts, each individual one, really needs to reach out to the state level and say, hey, we want this technology, because the state knows that it's there. Littleton can participate in maybe some beta testing of the state levels with the students to say, hey, look, here's the participation rate, here's this, here's that, opt into some of those things at the state level. So that way we can start to protect our local environments in our little town. And these are all things that you guys as boards of health can reach out to the layers above you in the state to say, hey, we want to participate. Hey, we need to start doing some of this. Those things are very real. Pressure from individual towns is going to help move the state in specific directions. And this is something definitely the state needs a little help with to go out and do this type of stuff. So yes, this type of technology is there. It's in your phones right now. You don't need to buy new devices. You may need to update your OS, but all those things are there. The same thing with like helping Katrina come up with her numbers. There are technologies called Jupyter Notebooks and simple source code check-in repository things that can automate her process so that she doesn't have to spend the hours at night burning coffee and doing this stuff. It would automatically download or ask you to input the numbers for Littleton and the surrounding communities. And then it would go off and do those calculations. So those are the kinds of things that I'm bringing to the table for you guys to kind of go off on.
It's my understanding that in order for the APK to be activated in the Apple as well as the Android, that the user has to turn it on.
Yes, the user has to turn it on. And there's even another step to this, that starting this out, Apple and Google created something called entitlements. And the entitlements would allow the public health authority to set this thing up. And they said one per country, unless the country dictates. The United States has dictated that it's per state. So now every state has the ability to get these entitlements. The states have already reached out to Google and Apple, and they're in the process. Massachusetts is in the process of getting them from Apple. They have them from Google already. And the user would have to turn this on as an opt-in, but it is already part and baked in as part of the operating system. So it is something, it's another tool for you guys to start to go off and use.
Do you have some knowledge of what, I want to be careful here. I'll be general. Do you have any information or insight into the communities in China that have instituted something, I'll say, along the lines you just described?
Yes. So there are other countries that are using different technologies. Singapore, for instance, is using a different Bluetooth technology that is allowing the application to run on the top surface. It would basically always be running, and you'd have to keep that on the top surface. China has a different application that they're using. Sweden, Switzerland, a whole bunch of European countries are also going the Google Apple API. There are multiple vendors out there that have some freeware type things that are out there for applications for people to use. But mostly you got to get through that Google Apple entitlements, and that's where you need to work with the state. And that's the pressure point where you guys can work to start to say, hey, we want to start doing this type of stuff. MITRE as a corporation has developed, like I said, a white label app that can work alongside whatever's in the OS, but that's up to the state to start to do some of that stuff. Universities, Boston BU, I think it is, Boston College, BU. BU is currently working on some of their stuff. Washington University is also working on it. Canada's got a really good one. So there's a bunch out there, and we're constantly reading that information. Sorry.
Have you had success in Cambridge?
Cambridge as a town, I am unaware of what the Board of Health inside of Cambridge is doing. I am hyper vigilant on my local town.
I got you. Okay.
Natick, and then because I have family in Natick, but then from where I go is the state, federal, and then international.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. There's just somebody there who's grinding away with the same stuff, and I figure they have implemented it, or at least since it can be turned on.
If you would like me to if you would like to connect us and reach out, I'll be more than happy to talk with that individual, and share some of the stuff that we have going on, because that's part of what MITRE does.
Okay.
Any other board comments, questions?
No question. Very good, informative situation there.
Yeah, sounds really good. Can I ask Jim or Kevin, what would, I guess Kevin and the rest of the potential members of the task force, what would be different than what Jim is actually doing for us? I mean, obviously a lot more information, but is it going to be?
So,
go ahead.
So from my perspective, the exposure notification is just another tool that Jim could use for contact tracing. I've also worked with the state of Florida to set up some of their contact tracing. There's been a whole lot of work that we've done. The other individuals, I'm sure, could comment on what they would work with and do, and I would also be willing to help him out, automate some of the calculations and methodologies that he's got.
And Jim, does this all sound like stuff that you could use?
I'm going to kind of plead ignorance on how this would actually interact with the way we do contact tracing. I understand globally how those apps work, but how they work for us. For contact tracing for us, once we talk to a positive individual, we actually go and chase all those people down that they tell us for close contacts and talk to them about quarantining. I'm just not sure how this works with that process. So I guess I'd need to know more about that.
So Jim, I'll be more than happy to talk to you about that instead of taking up the board's time now. But this would be one of those things where when the individual gets their COVID positive test case number, they would input that into the app. And then the app then would, over a period of time, and depending upon the state levels of the knobs that they've set, would notify the individuals that they've had a close contact and they would need to go, contact their boards of health and go do the next step.
Okay.
And the other question, how, and this is just because I have no idea, I don't know if Janet or Jim can give us some guidance on this. Do we have, as a Board of Health, do we have a jurisdiction, or is it in our jurisdiction to actually approve of a task force for this? I mean, I don't see why not. It's gathering information, but is it like a specialty group for the Neshoba Board of Health or a specialty group for Littleton Board of Health?
I'm not sure what would be required to put together a group who would then report to you. I mean, the board has the authority, but the state gives boards of health to do the things that boards of health do. So I'm not sure what additional level, whether it may be something, if it was some kind of formal designation that you'd probably have to talk to town administrator about whether there's some formalized process to bring on a task force. But if they're a loose group that just comes and provides information to the board, I'm not sure how far you have to get into that.
Yeah, to my knowledge, they can form themselves if they want to, and then
Sure.
we can decide on if we want to listen and take the information that they have. I don't think it needs to be anything super formal.
Can I make just a minor suggestion that if it's all right with other members of the board, that we give some thought on how best to work, and also if we could maybe tonight to help us a little bit, I don't mean to sound could we focus on maybe no more than one or two areas to begin with, so that we don't overload this group, because we still outnumber them. Okay, and we're asking a lot. I mean, I can already tell you I have about 4 pages of questions already lined up, and all this is to get me out from under. So all I have to, what I'm suggesting is can we decide very quickly the 3 or 4 areas? Maybe we've already been told what those areas are, but we haven't heard them from this group. But I've already heard the tracking of the rate, okay, is very helpful to the schools and to everyone else. And please, if there's someone in the audience who disagrees, please pipe up. This is just, it's too late in the evening to be right. Okay.
Raised, she might have some insight on the other couple things that we can sort of focus on.
Okay, Janet, can we let Katrina back on?
I'm sorry, my computer just blanked out when you guys were talking.
That's
Someone update
scary
me?
right there. Okay.
I know, I was like, you're asking for me, but I don't know why. Last thing I heard was rates.
What I was saying is we're discussing, well, I think Lisa can explain to you where we're at. I'm trying to see if tonight we can identify two or three, the most two areas to start that your group would be pursuing. This will help us decide what structure you should have. But I think the information about some of the topics that you mentioned in particular, and about contact tracing for other reasons and pushing for testing, those are the three that, you know, as far as I'm concerned, they're urgent.
Yeah, I would agree. Those three are the most important to pursue right now.
Okay, so I'd like to hear my colleagues chime in.
I've said before, if we can narrow it down to a certain couple of topics, like Katrina said, the things that you guys are most passionate about that we can use in real life, I guess would say, because there is so much stuff happening, and then just kind of dumb it down for us. But, you know, like Mike said, just kind of narrow it down to a few things that you think are important. I think it's great. We've got some smart people in town.
Yeah, Mike, I think you nailed it. Like rates, contact tracing, and testing, like those top three. Everybody, education, maybe like a fourth. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, these are they're actionable. Two of them at least are actionable.
Yeah.
Because if we're very lucky and we can pick up early signs of a trend we don't like to see, we can go to the school, the schools, and say, look, fellas or ladies and gentlemen, you better back off. And we're the Board of Health, and this is why we want you to back off. Here are the numbers. Here's what's going on. And I think coming from us, it may carry some weight.
Yeah, that all sounds good. Louise, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I love the whole idea. It's more proactive than what we have been doing before, so I think it's great. And maybe I think the first project, I know it sounds silly, well, not real silly, but is Halloween. It's not that far away.
I think the idea is to keep the rate low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested in the Halloween thing is interesting to see whether or not it's really a rate limiter.
Yeah, and I haven't had a chance to read what you guys said the CDC just posted about Halloween. Haven't been able to read that yet. So what more could they possibly tell kids to do, you know, besides 6 feet mask?
I'm sorry. This has got to be my last question tonight. I got to take these off. ASIMS, why does she keep disappearing? I don't understand that. Okay.
Katrina?
Yeah.
In the audience. She's just not on the main screen.
All right. I'm hoping that her insight includes an estimation of ASIMS in the population.
So that's a really great question. It's definitely something that the state level data doesn't have information on. I can look into the literature, and I think this is where the task force could really be helpful by looking at various estimates of asymptomatic people or pre-symptomatic people to see if we can get an idea of, given our positive rate, how many may also be pre or asymptomatic walking among us out in the public. But
good luck in the literature because
I know it's all over the place. So I do think this is what you're trying. I love that you're trying to get at this, Mike. I love that you're trying to get to the, like, what can we do ahead of time? And this is where the data doesn't support what we want to know. And that's one of the limitations we have right now. I have, in my communications with the school, asked them to track absenteeism and symptoms that they have reported by parents as kids who are falling out for various reasons or sicknesses or something. And while those aren't like hard signs of COVID, I think they may give us that would probably be the earliest sign of something brewing that we can't see for another week or two in the case positivity. So I have asked Dr. Clenchy to do that. I know he has worked with his nurses from the things he has told me to like pull that stuff together. I haven't seen what's come out of that. And that's something that I think the Board of Health could look into. He doesn't necessarily be able to tell me, but he could probably walk you guys through what they're doing on that end.
Okay, you just gave this is a task for us.
Yeah.
And this is why I wanted to focus on the 2 or 3 things. Lisa, shut me up, will you, please?
Oh, you're very interesting, Mike.
He's tired of talking.
No, my ears hurt because of this
Yeah.
stupid, yeah. I think we have every reason to ask the super to allow the Board of Health anonymized information about, shall we say, the health status of the students there so that we can begin looking for early signs.
What's your take on teacher absences?
I'm including those as well. I think she is. I think she's doing it too.
Okay.
I can tell from her smile that she's looking at him. Oh, your smile hasn't changed the whole time.
It hasn't
All right.
changed. It's still there.
The rate of change is constant. Okay, so it's good. It's okay. Planck's constant. Thank God. Okay.
All right. So first step, I think it sounds great. I think you can't get too much information, and for you guys to kind of put it in terms that we can all understand, that's a good thing. So first step is maybe talking to the town administrator and Clenchy, or I know, Mike, you just said that Clenchy should share that information with us. Do we go to town administrator first to ask about a task force formation?
I'd like to get moving faster.
Okay.
I don't really care. I mean, I shouldn't. It's not that I don't care about the town administrator. I believe he's the interim town administrator.
Yeah, we have the
Okay.
right to do. We have the right to do whatever.
So what I'd like to do is to form an advisory board or advisory team. We'll call it this way. It's least toxic to all the sensitive people out there. Advisory team to
COVID advisory team?
an advisory team. All right. And to address, to assist our board in addressing 3 issues as a way of assessing the effectiveness and also the value of having an advisory board. Okay. So we're using the team to look at some really crucial questions as soon as possible because of their urgency and significance. Of the schools opening, of using the movie theater as a place to tutor kids and not tutor, to have kids sit in front of the screens and all the rest, parties. I mean, I think we have every reason to get this input about early surveillance as rapidly as we can. And I'd like to just say we formed an advisory team tonight and ask them gratis to as it were, examine the 3 areas that we were specifying. And they could say no, and we'll just find 3 other people. Right.
Not that easy. I'll second that.
I want to make sure the chair and everyone's comfortable with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I am.
Can we call it like the COVID advisory team or something like that?
Is the advisory team, the advisory folks happy with this startup, or would you like to have something more important sounding, like the Crazy 4?
Insane ones.
Corey has an idea. She's got her hand raised.
All right. Corey?
I would love that name. It's all about the acronym. So CAT sounds good.
There you go. I like it.
Advisory
Yeah.
team.
The Littleton Cat.
Mhm. We can be like the mini
Westford has
tigers.
a cat. Westford has.
Almost like
Mini tigers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's almost like a tiger.
Uh-oh, they're going to need T-shirts.
Gotta work on a logo. All right. I think that's great.
Littleton Cat.
All right. So is that it? we don't have, do we have to take a vote or we're all,
I'd like to at least give them the benefit of a strong benefit of endorsement through a motion. Kevin, are you okay with that? I don't want to overdo.
I'll second your motion.
Louis, I don't, not.
okay, so you make,
I don't think you made the motion yet, did you?
Oh, I thought there was a motion. I'm sorry.
I make the motion that we form a COVID advisory team made up of individuals selected by the Board of Health, and to report to the Board of Health their findings.
I'll second.
okay, and I agree to, we'll do a roll call though. Kevin Baker?
Yes.
I don't know where Gino went. Did he go to sleep?
It's late.
Yeah, he left a little bit ago.
Sorry?
He left a little bit ago.
Yeah. So Louise
Nichols, yes.
Sheldon
Mike Zeldin, yes.
and Lisa Flanagan, yes. So that's great.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for getting them all together for us.
So grateful. There's so many like good, smart, willing people. to help.
Wicked smart.
Yeah. As Mr. DeCosta would say, wicked smart. Yeah.
All right. I've lost my agenda. Where did I put it? Jim, does that all sound good to you? Should we have, I guess if we ask too late after we've.
Is there anything else we need to do?
Are there public comments?
There are public comments after member comments. I think we went right. This was just correspondence from the science. I started with the science teachers letter, and we kind of segued into the task force discussion.
Daniel Fife signed on. I don't know. I think he's maybe related to Mrs. Fife, who wrote the letter about the mining operation down there. I don't know if he's got anything to say.
I'm not sure if I think. Okay. We've kind of discussed that. Is that all right to go back to that? I think Jim was going to contact the coast.
There's no, I mean, certainly no issue. I mean, so if somebody actually has comments about it, sure.
Okay. All right. So Daniel, did you you had your hand up? Doesn't anymore. So I guess that I guess one question, Mr. Castillo, who is actually on that
So Jonathan Castillo, Corey Painter, Katrina Hagberg, and I don't know if they had any
people that were on the meeting tonight, or is there anybody else?
I don't know if they anybody else. They referred to someone, Greg, but I hadn't heard anything else. That first name, Greg. So,
Daniel Fife has his hand up now.
Daniel.
Oh, Kevin Davis. Yeah, sorry.
Kevin Davis.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna turn on my Bluetooth app now.
Daniel Fife can speak now.
Hi, actually, it's Jennifer Fife. Sorry, it just must be a crossover of our names on our accounts. I apologize. Jennifer Fife, 9 Sleigh Ride Lane. I had written a letter to the Board of Selectmen and CC'd you, the Board of Health, on it regarding the 9 Air Road construction site. Well, that's what they like to call it. It's basically a mining operation. And this property is directly behind the Sleigh Ride Lane development. There's been construction going on since January. We were on several calls earlier this year regarding the soil removal and, just kind of some of the disruptions that have been going on. The last month or so have been really treacherous as far as noise, pollution that we're seeing going to the air from some of the machines that are being used, smoke coming from these machines, dirt billowing into the air, just to the point where it's just extremely disruptive to our lives. And this is expected to go on for at least another 10 months. And it just seems unsafe and very concerning, where we have many, many young children playing in the area. And like, I took videos of construction vehicles, the noise and the smoke going into the air while my children and some of my neighbors' children's were playing right there. And just doesn't seem to be much change going on. There is a sign right at the entrance of the site that says that is an active mine site. And everyone's kind of treating it as if they're just building homes, which they're not. So just wanted to bring it your attention and see if there was, some attention that could be brought to this, and see what the implications are, to the public health.
Right, Jennifer, we already discussed this earlier, and Jim Gareffi is going to get in touch with Mr. DeCoste from Board of Selectmen, and also look into doing some sound and dust monitoring for you.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa, do you think there's anything we can do in the interim where they're trying to figure out, if this is affecting the public health of these families and these kids in an adverse way, where we can just sort of like, pump the brakes for a minute? Mike?
Like a cease and desist order, Kevin?
I don't know. I know the guy. I don't want to be a jerk, but if the people over there are having these problems, then it's kind of our job to do something about it.
Jim, is there anything that we can do you think?
Well, I guess I'd like to go out and take a look at it first. And again, the board needs to decide what kind of actions you want to take, but we need to know what kind of situation's happening over there before you take those actions.
How long has it been since we've known about it going on and inaction?
So I'm not sure what the date of that letter is. I thought the town, I'm not sure. I thought the town had a cease and desist on the operation, but it got appealed. So I guess that's why the operation continues.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, Mike.
Someone in the audience can answer this. If there are are there children in this, anyone, including children in the environment, who have pre-existing upper respiratory disorders? I don't want to have you divulge medical information, whoever answers the question, but I just want to know, is there anyone or any kids, adults who live in that area, especially given the fact that people are sort of have to hang out at their house a lot, who have pre-existing respiratory conditions? And if they do, I'm not asking you to do this because we necessarily would need it, but it might be helpful if a treating physician was able to provide some documentation about the effects of dust, et cetera, on said individuals.
My daughter has 2 friends that live on that road, and guaranteed they have respiratory stuff going on.
I'm not trying to stay away from personal information here. I'm trying to ask. I'm trying to get see if there's something else going on here that is actually useful. That we in conjunction with the neighborhood can do something.
Jen, raise her hand again. Jeez.
Hi, Mike. This is Jen again on Sleigh Ride. We definitely have several children. I'm not going to divulge everything, but one of my neighbor's children has asthma. We have several kids who have several allergies as well. So there's definitely concerns there. It's concerning that I'm not sure how they're measuring a lot of the, because they did put some measuring, as far as dust and noise in place, but what are their parameters? Are they based off of commercial zones or residential zone? Because they're basically operating as if it's a commercial zone and it's not.
Well, I guess I'm interested in the human zone.
Yes. Well, yeah, it's a human zone. Exactly. Yeah. What I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, the fact that I had my son's first communion 2 weeks ago, and I did not have an outdoor celebration with my family because the backyard is not usable for that.
Jim, do you have any knowledge about the value or impact of the pre-existing health condition of people who live in an environment, live in an area where this kind of work is going on, without prejudging? I mean, just in general, does that have any weight?
I think the weight comes in by going and viewing the situation and looking at the standards that the state has set for these operations. So I think that's really where the board would take its action, is on that kind of information.
Okay.
Jim, may I go with you when you head down there?
Sure.
Yeah, just let me know. Send me a
Yep.
text or
Yep.
So
You
if I,
wanna-
so
you
it's-
guys
so if I-
want to somehow coordinate with Chuck DeCoste to see if he's gone there yet too?
yeah, I can text you.
I guess what I was asking, Jim, I don't think my question came across. If there are n number of people living let's say with 250 feet of what we'll call a dust generating particle size, particles floating in the air, does that have they have a pre-existing condition that is exacerbated? Does that carry any weight, or is it just measurement of the particle size as measured by a machine?
So I don't know the answer to the first part of your question, but again, enforcement comes in. I mean, they do enforcement for not only people who may have health conditions, but people who are healthy too, because we don't want additional health concerns. So again, the standards would be set to try to be protective of the public health.
Maybe it's a late hour. Could you please explain that just a minute? Or do you understand it, Kevin? What are you saying?
So I don't know that they take individual health concerns into account when they're making decisions on what the standard should be. I think they may be informed about that, but if we're going to do enforcement, I don't think the state is concerned that there may be people with health concerns, is that everybody's affected if they're not meeting the standards.
I understand that.
Okay, so that's,
Okay.
I think that's what I'm
Okay,
getting
got
at.
it.
Yeah, okay,
I got it. Okay.
sorry, I didn't explain it as well.
No. So in other words, somebody healthy out there is equal in the eyes of the state as someone who's got asthma, for example.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so Kevin and Jim, Kevin, you're gonna get in touch with Mr. DeCoste and hook up with Jim about going out for a visit.
That out whenever Jim's got the busier calendar than I, so whenever.
Okay.
Make sure you stay 6 feet apart.
Absolutely.
I'll stay 8.
8.
Don't believe everything you read.
All right. Do you think that covers all the correspondence? Anybody else have questions
Did a lot.
about the correspondence? No. All right. Should we move on to member comments then?
There are no hands raised in the audience, Lisa.
Okay. I have a member comment. Louise and I sent a letter to the Board of Selectmen, and it was a resident complained that it was in violation of the open meeting law. Diane Crory, the town clerk, responded to it and said that the complaint was unfounded. And I have Louise and I have 30 days to respond to it. And I am not prepared to respond to it at this time, but within the next 30 days, I will. Anybody else have any questions, comments?
Nope.
my comment would be is that you announced during that meeting with the school committee with members of the Board of Health present about the mechanisms by which you're going to conduct that joint meeting. You asked at least twice, maybe 3 times. I think Janet probably knows exactly how many times you asked about comments about your procedure. It was, shall we say, no one raised a question about it. And I consider you have the responsibility of setting up the logistics of the meeting, and you did that. And I consider the letter that you wrote to be an extension of that responsibility that does not require us to vote.
Thanks.
They're your rules. Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Are we having another school committee joint meeting anytime soon?
Not that I know of. I've been in touch with Mike. He says things are going well.
Yeah.
Maybe we should with the task force or something.
Well, I'd like to give the task force at least 24 hours to come up with some good stuff.
All right.
Anybody else have any member comments? Mike, lots of good questions tonight, Mike.
I apologize to you all for boring you to tears.
No.
From a short agenda or no agenda to one of the longest meetings we've had.
We're lucky to have you, Mike.
So lucky. All right.
Okay.
And public comments? Janet, anybody have their hand raised at all?
No hands are raised.
Excellent. So do we have, anybody want to make a motion to adjourn? Or is there anything else you want to talk about? We have a meeting in 2 weeks, correct?
Yeah, should we just circle back offline?
Let me just double check. I think it's actually 3 weeks because of the way it falls. 1, 2, we will be in 3 weeks on October 14th.
Oh, I feel like we should have one sooner than 3 weeks. I don't know. Can we figure that out? Like maybe like offline after we talk to the task force and see what the, I guess, emergent stuff is that we might need to address.
Be interesting to see how, give, like Mike said, give them more than 20.
The data from the school absenteeism and things like that. Like that might be something we should look at before 3 weeks. I don't know. Or at least someone talking to Superintendent Clenchey about it.
Like Mike said, give them more than 24 hours to compile some information.
48, right? Is that what?
48. Is it,
yeah.
Could we just meet with them like we did when we did the COVID, just real quick, alternating Wednesday nights?
Yeah, or we could do like
just not like what we did with Jim and Scott. We just talked about COVID.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do something like that every other when we don't have our regularly scheduled meeting.
Or if we want to assign a Board of Health member to join the task force.
Oh, there's something.
Like I nominate Mr. Zeldin, for instance.
No, actually, I'm very biased. You can't have me on there.
I second that.
Kevin was the one that brought it to fruition.
I'm not as smart as Mike, though. I'll admit that. I'm smart enough to admit that I'm not as smart as Mike. So,
well, this is
Me too.
I think that Kevin especially wants to know about this stuff, right?
I do. Everybody wants to know about it. Sure.
When you say everybody, be careful.
I know.
Okay. As much as I'd like to, I think it might be more effective to me for the committee for me to be on the other, if you pardon the expression, on the other side.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I'll meet with those folks, if they want to do a weekly or something during the day or whenever, take a lunch break and do it and then report back to the board.
See, and the beauty of that is they can then complain to Kevin about how awful I am. See, and that's and asking questions, you see, so that they could, it works out really well.
I like your questions.
All right. So maybe Kevin meet with them and then we bring us the information and then Mike can ask his questions about it.
Yeah, and I guess if there's like an immediate need to schedule a meeting prior to our next meeting, we'll just kind of try and do that.
Yeah.
Could you get a letter together for Mr. Clenchey about providing information requested by the Board of Health and to provide it to the member of the task advisor, the task team?
So it's requested by the Board of Health.
Yeah.
But provided to
Advisory team.
Yeah.
Board of Health requesting school, what kind,
the absenteeism, anonymous data, information about the absenteeism data for both students and teachers and faculty.
Kevin, you might want to check back with her and make sure those are the main things she wants from him.
Okay.
Suggestion.
you're gonna take care of that letter, Kevin?
I'll run it by you first, but yeah, I'll write it up.
All right.
Thank you, Lisa.
No, thank you guys. This has been great.
I'm sensing Gino's making a motion to adjourn.
Well, one question, and Jim, I don't know if you're still on, but would it be smart for Jim to be on board with those meetings too, Kevin? Or Jim, do you want to wait and just hear what they have to say at our meetings?
You know, I'm going to say that it's been really busy and I'm not sure I have time for yet another meeting, so.
Okay. Totally understood. So we'll just see you at our regular meeting on the 14th and we can contact you if we have any questions.
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. Where's Gino? Time to adjourn?
It's listed under the attendees.
I just noticed that. Can you bring him in? Because I know he'd love to make a motion to adjourn.
Maybe he's already adjourned. There he is.
Hey, here you go, Gino. Gino, can you do a motion to adjourn, Gino?
You're muted.
This is kind of like when Cam Newton gave the football to that other guy to spike it because he was out for a season.
There he is. Gino.
Can you see me?
Yeah, we need you to make a motion to adjourn.
I said I make a motion to adjourn.
We didn't hear you. Do I have a second?
It's not my fault.
I'll second.
All right. So Gino, Kevin, roll call.
Kevin Baker, yes.
Gino.
We didn't have one second. I'll second it.
Can you see me now?
No, Kevin seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We can see Gino.
All right. So I made the motion. It was second. Am I correct?
Yes. Now we're doing a roll call.
I just let you know that my tablet went off 3, 4, 5 times, and then I had to put you on my phone. That's why I was absent.
Okay. So we're taking a roll call.
Gino said yes.
Okay. Kevin, did I already ask? Kevin's already gone. Louise,
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Yes. Mike Zeldin, yes.
and Lisa Flanagan, yes. All right. Great meeting, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.